Christmas lesson, we play with numbers. Yeah. Today we are going to learn about traditional method of finding the square root of a perfect square. Now, when we talk about a perfect square is a number that can be expressed as a product of two equal integers. 9 is an example of a perfect square because 3 times 3 will give us 9. 4. 2 times 2 will give us 4. 1 times 1 will give us 1. So that's why we are going to have 1 square, 2 square, 3 square. So let's get to our board and look at more examples of perfect square. Now, 1 square will give us 1. 2 square, 4. 3 square, 9. 4 square, 16. 5 square, 25. 6 square, 36. 7 square, 49. 8 square, 64. 9 square, 81. 10 square, 100. These are examples of perfect square. And these perfect squares have their ending digits. And what are the ending digits? 0, 1, 4, 5, 6, and 9. So when you take 81, its ending digit here is 1. 64, its ending digit here is 4. 49, its ending digit here is 9. So these are the ending digits of perfect square. So perfect square has their ending digits to be 0, 1, 4, 5, 6, and 9. Now, which numbers have their ending digits to be 1? 1 and 9. And when you check, 1 plus 9 will give us 10. Okay, so 2 plus 8 also give us 10. 2 and 8 has their ending digit to be 4 because 2 square will give us 4 and 8 square will give us 64. When it comes to 6, 4 and 6 has their ending digit to be 6. 4 square will give us 16. 6 square will give us 36. So we have their ending digit to be 6. 3 and 7 has their ending digit to be 9. 3 square will give us 9 and 7 square will give us 49. This is what is going to help us to find the square root of a perfect square. It's very simple. Our learners will be able to find the square root of 1, 4, 9, 16, 25. But when it gets further to 3 digits to 4 digits, they find it difficult to do that. So, I'm going to give you some of the fundamental steps that you can use to teach them to find the square root of a perfect square. It's very simple. Now, let's get started with our examples. Example 1. Square root of 169. Now, the first thing you're supposed to do is to determine the last digit. And now, what is the last digit here? It's 9. Now, what two numbers give us the last digit to be 9? That is 3 and 7. So 3 and 7 give us the last digit to be what? 9. Okay, so 3 square will give us 9 and 7 square will give us 49. So here you have two values, that is 3 and 7. So 3 and 7 give us the ending digit here to be 9. Now, after finding the ending digits, you rule out the last two digits. So you rule out. So when you rule out here, you are left with 1. Now, is 1 a perfect square? If 1 is a perfect square, then you don't have problem. But when 1 is not a perfect square, you have to find the closest number, which is a perfect square. So our 1 here is a perfect square. So 1 square root of 1 is 1. So we have 1. So in this case, we are going to have two values here. So what the next thing? As you are going to have two values here, after getting your 1, after writing your 1 here, you increase this value with 1. So here will be 1, here will be 1. So here we have 13 and 17. Now, how to get your right answer? How do you get your right answer? To get your right answer, you increase this one number here by 1, then multiply. So what number comes after 1 is 2. So you say times 2. Now, 1 times 2 here will give us 2. The next step is to compare 1 and 2. 1 and 2. 1 is less than 2. So if the value that you have here is less than the product here, you go by the smaller value. But if the value that you have here is greater than the product you have here, you go by the larger value. So you realize that 1 is less than 2. So I'll go by the smaller value, which is 13. So therefore, square root of 169 will give us 13. Now, example 2, square root of 361. The first thing you're supposed to do is to identify the last digit. So what is our last digit here? 1. Which two numbers give us the last digit to be 1? So when it comes to the chart, that is 1 and 9. So 1 and 9 give us the last digit to be 1. We have 1 and 9. So if you have 1 and 9 to be your last digit, now the next step is to rule out the first two digits here. We are going to rule out. So I'll take out 6 and 1. So what number is left here? We are left with 3. So what perfect square? Because 3 here is not a perfect square. You find a perfect square closer to 3. 2 is not a perfect square. 1 is a perfect square. And 1 square root of 1 will give us 1. Because 1 square will give us 1. So 1. So you put your 1 here. Now, you increase this one by 1. So we have two values. We have 11 and 19. Now we want to get our right answer. To get your right result here, you increase this number by 1 and multiply. So 1, when I increase by 1, I'll have what? 2. Now when I multiply, this time is 1 times 2 will give us 2. Now looking at the value that you have here, 3 and 2. 3 is greater than 2. 3 is greater than 2. So if 3 is greater than 2, then you go by the larger value because our answers here are 2. So you go by the larger value because 3 is greater than what? 2. Therefore, our answer is equals to what? 19. 19. Example 3. How are you going to do that? The first thing is to identify your last digit. Last digit here is 5. Now, you check from the table, let them know, okay, two numbers. I told you when it is ending with 5, it is only one digit, which is what? 5. So put down your 5. Now, after writing your 5 here, you rule out the last two digits. So these are gone. So you are left with 2 here. 2 is not a perfect square. Which perfect square is closer to 2? 1. Square root of 1 is 1. Okay, so you put your 1 here and increase this one by 1. So this one is direct answer. So your answer is going to be 15. Good. At the fourth one, you determine the last digit. I told you when it is 0 and 5, you're going to get what? One result. So 0 and 5, you just put down your last digit, which is what? 0. Now, what do? You rule out the two last digits. The next step is to find out whether the number here is a perfect square. So 4. 4 is a perfect square. And what number gives us the square? 4 is a perfect square. And what number gives us 4? 2. So here is what you increase here, you put down a 2 and increase here by 2, which we are going to have our answer to be 20. Now let's look at the fifth one. This is 4 digits. How to find the square root of 4 digits. Square root of 1156. Remember the last digit. So our last digit here is 6. Two numbers that end with 6, that is 4 and 6. You have 4 and 6. Now, what are you going to do? After getting your 4 and 6, you rule out these numbers. So you are left with 11. Which perfect square is closer to 11? 10 is not a perfect square. 9 is a perfect square. So I'm going to use 9. And what number gives us 9? That is 3. So 3 here. So you increase these numbers by 3 and also 3. So now you are having 34 and 36. We need one result. So what are you going to do? You increase this number by 1 and multiply. So when I increase by 1 here, I'm going to have 4. So 3 times 4 will give us 12. Now you compare 11 and 12. 11 here is less than what? 12. So the moment 11 is less than 12, you circle a lesser value, which is 34. So the lesser value here is what? 34. If the number you have here is less than the product. Now, therefore, our answer is equal to 34. Now we go with the next one. The square root of 1296. Any digit, the same any digit, that is 4 and 6. So what's the next thing? We'll strike out. So when you strike out, we are left with 12. 12 is not a perfect square. Which perfect square is closer to 12? 11 is not, 10 is not, 9. And square root of 9 will give us 3. So here is 3. Here is 3. Now you put your 3 down here. You put your 3 down here. We have the same result as the first one here. 34 and 36. Which one is the right one? Is it 34 or 36? How do you do that? Before you get the answer, you multiply this one by 4. Where did I get a 4 from? I have to increase this number by 1, or the number that comes after the 3, which is 4. So when you multiply this, you are going to have what? 12. So realize that 12 is here, 12 is here. They are equal. If this number that we have here is equal to this number, you go for the larger value. But when it is less than, you go for the smaller value. And when again is greater than, you go for the larger value. So here, our result here is what? 36. So therefore, our answer here is what? 36. Let's look at the square root of 2025. What's the last digit? Our last digit here is 5. Here, you just put down your 5. Okay, just put down your 5 because here it's not competing with 2 digits. It's only 5. All right. Then what's the next thing? You rule out the 2 digits. So 25 is gone. So you are left with what? 20. Now, perfect square closer to 20. 19, no. 18, no. 17, no. 16, correct. So 16. Then which number gives us the perfect square to be 16? 4. So 4. So you now put down the 16. Rather, you find the square root of 16, which is 4. So you put down 4. Then directly you increase this one by 4. So you see that here we have only one value here. So you just go by that number, which is equal to what? 45. That's your final answer. Now let's look at the last one here. which is 1600. The square root of 1600. Now, what is the square root of 1600? It's ending with 0. Always try to identify the last digit. So our last digit here is what? The 0. And I told you when it's ending with 0, you're going to get only one value. So here is what? 0. Put down your 0. Alright. So if you put down your 0, the next thing is to strike out the two digits. Now you are left with what? 16. Is 16 the perfect square? Yes. And what is the square root of 16? The square root of 16 is what? 4. So here we just increase this one by 4. So therefore, the square root of 1600 is equal to 40. Very simple. It's equals to 40. Very simple. So try this one and this one. And after solving, you send your results to my comment section. This brings us to the end of our lesson. Don't forget to like, to share, and comment. Next month's lesson, we play with numbers. Yeah. Bye bye. Yeah.